Uh, the final speaker in this session is Paul Cann, who is Chief Executive of Age Concern Oxfordshire. And I can't see where Paul is, but I'm afraid I'm going to apologise for giving him short shrift. I'm going to cut short my eulogy, Paul, really by quite a lot. So lots of your glories are going to be dropped out. I'm going to begin in 1992, dropping kings and the delights of the Cabinet Office, and start when you took up the first of several senior posts in the voluntary sector and began what is undoubtedly a distinguished career as a different kind of public servant from the one you'd been before, working this time from outside government instead of within it. You've got his biography in front of you, and if you look at the list of organisations for which Paul has worked, you'll see a common thread, undoubtedly. All these organisations work on behalf of people who are seriously disadvantaged in one way or another. And the organisation's job is to try to change the situation of these people for the better, to compensate for disadvantage or to remove the conditions that create it. And this is what Paul did with Help the Aged from 2000 to 2009. As Director of Policy and External Affairs, he was responsible for initiating all the charities' domestic campaigns and for lobbying Parliament. The aim was to get government to do things differently, to get all of us to think differently, to change the public agenda and make sure that older people have their rightful place in society. And I think this is what Paul still tries to do. And my own sense of the work of Help the Aged over that time is that they were an extremely effective campaigning organisation, and that was due in no small part to Paul's exemplary efforts as their Director of Policy. And it's a measure of the effectiveness of his work that in 2008 he received a medal from the British Geriatric Society for his outstanding contribution to improving the well-being of older people. Not long after the beginning of Paul's tenure at Help the Aged, the organisation did something very important, which showed them to be a very forward-looking and smart organisation. They made a substantial endowment to the Institute of Ageing. And this endowment transformed the Centre for Population Ageing into the Institute. So it's probably no exaggeration to say that without the support of Help the Aged, and which Paul played a very important part, the Institute wouldn't be in a position to celebrate its 10th birthday today. So we have to thank you, Paul, for your role in helping to nurture and develop the Institute, as well as for agreeing to speak to us this evening. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much indeed, Ken. It's not often that people have a problem cutting short my eulogy, I must say. So it's very good. Actually, the bit of my biography that I'm sort of proud of is belonging to the local village film society in the village of Hook Norton in Oxfordshire. I don't know if any of you know Hook Norton, where I think this is a wonderful model of intergenerational solidarity. That's a phrase we hear about a lot. And what happens is we go along, we choose some films, we go along and we first of all have a glass of wine. And my responsibility is to provide the wine for the film society. And so we have quite a few glasses of wine. We then have something to eat. We have a communal meal, which we take it in turns to cook. And then we watch a film, and we talk about the film afterwards. And the youth club does the washing up. And I think that is a great model. I'm just trying to find on this system here now. Oh, yes. That's not my presentation. Thank you. Thanks. Now, yeah, I have a lot of problems, and I haven't come to talk to you about all of them tonight, but one of them is I keep getting asked to speak after distinguished and impressive academic and political figures. And if that's bad luck for me, I wonder what it's like for the audience. And I hope this is not going to be too much like kind of putting down War and Peace and picking up a Janet and John bedtime story. I hope that what it's about partly is about what do we do with this knowledge? What do we do with research? What does it mean? Where does it go? And my sort of friendly challenge in this spirit of celebration is, does your learning, does your knowledge travel? And where does it go? Now, my experience was, as Ken very kindly said, as Director of Policy at Help the Aged. And I'd been there about a couple of years, and I started to get very confused. In fact, the more I read about ageing, the more I got confused. And particularly about this thing called compression of morbidity. Yeah. So I said to the research team at Help the Aged, look, I'm getting very confused. And they patted me on the head. And I said, could you write me a really short, sort of snappy, one side of A4 piece that actually captures what's going on with compression of morbidity? So they went away for a few weeks, a big huddle, and they came back with a 10-page paper which was littered with references and footnotes, and sometimes actually there were only references and footnotes, and lots of very snappy phrases like the rectangularization of the survival curve. It just trips off the tongue, doesn't it? And eventually, after several cups of coffee, I got to the concluding paragraph, and my heart was beginning to dance for joy. And it said, in all seriousness, I tell you, I kid you not, the available evidence supports the following three conclusions. 1, there is compression of morbidity. 2, there is expansion of morbidity. 3, there is no change in the relative proportion of morbidity, because all the evidence is gathered together couldn't get them in a place where they could say one or the other. What that says, I think, is two things. One is this is a very complex area, as we know. And 2, we need the Oxford Institute of Population Ageing. What I want to do briefly, and I'm very conscious of what Richard said about the impact on your neural systems of delayed rewards. So I'm thinking about your neural systems now. And what I want to do is bring this back to why do we do this? And I go back to who are we talking about? And for me, I talk about individuals that I know. And the individual that I want to refer to briefly is my Aunt Mary, who died last year at the age of 92. And her story, I think, is incredibly instructive because it was a story, as I've said, of living longer to 92, a wonderful age. Living with money, she was not wealthy. In fact, she claimed the pension credit, the top-up benefit that older people were entitled to. And so that claiming helped her a lot with her daily life. It's also, in some ways, an unusual experience because many older people don't claim that benefit. She lived at home in the same house that she moved into in 1938, and a few months before she died, she met one of her neighbours who said to her, well, Mary, do you think you're going to like it here? She was at home in the community, and she had care services provided, which were okay, they were adequate, and she had a loving, devoted son who provided care for many, many years. The problem we have, I think, is that this is a relatively uncommon story. And what I've tried to focus on in the work that I've done is the inequalities that exist in terms, if you take life expectancy, if you take health, if you take income, if you take belonging. In any of these measures, we find there is a massive experience of inequality, even in this rich country of ours, even in this rich county of ours. Never has it, I think, been more movingly described than by Alan Bennett in his book Untold Stories, where he talked about his aunt suffering from dementia and how she went missing from the care home that she lived in, and eventually her body was found in a ditch somewhere. And the description of her death was that her life was at its lowest point of social valuation, 73, senile, demented, of no class or economic importance. Even in death, she was of marginal importance as a person. And that is, I think, the story that we have to grapple with and why we so much need research and knowledge and understanding to act, but also to persuade. And I said this county of ours, and it is absolutely true that in Oxfordshire we have inequalities on a massive scale too. And my analogy is, and we produced this report, A Tale of Two Counties, to illustrate this and to gather data across a range of subjects in Oxfordshire. My analogy is that if you drive, say, round the ring road, not in rush hour, but say roughly 10-minute drive round from here, roughly, North Ward in Oxford, to Barton and Blackbird Leys, that 10-minute drive equates to a 10-year drop in life expectancy. It's here and it's right in front of us. And these are the issues that we're trying to grapple with. So it's really important that we continue to build this bridge, that we continue to work with the research community. And over the last incredible 10 years, we have seen some amazing changes. Of course, we have seen demographic change, but we have really, I think, hoisted on board the significance, the scale of demographic change. We have had an advancement of older people as an issue in the public debate. Whether that has been tackling issues or ducking them is a subject for debate. We have had definitely attempts to tackle, as in pension reform in this country, and pension reform, and of course the existence of pensions, the challenges of pensions, is a shared problem across many, many countries. In long-term care, I fear it's been an issue of ducking the question, because over 10 years ago, we had a Royal Commission on Long-Term Care whose findings were largely shelved. That is still in front of us. I do think we've had an awakening of older people to their rights to an extent in all sorts of ways, culminating recently in equality law to protect people from age discrimination. And we have had a great deal of emphasis on healthy ageing. And so we have seen some very welcome steps forward. And here we have a couple of the strategies that the UK government has developed. We had Opportunity Age, we had a Sure Start to Later Life. And what I think is interesting is the question, to what extent is this shared agenda? And I've become increasingly convinced that many of the issues are not fundamentally different. They're about rights, they're about sharing resources, they're about healthy ageing. And the Age Friendly Cities initiative certainly took that work forward across a wide range of countries. Now, I saw on the list of people attending tonight at the University of Warsaw, so I'm afraid I can't resist the following slide, which to me sums up the ageing debate. And this is when I was working with older people's groups in Poland, I came across this cartoon, which I'm reliably informed is of a senior citizen heading towards the Olympic Stadium at the age of 95. And the Grim Reaper behind him is saying, in Polish, "I give up." Now, I don't know if the University of Warsaw is here to contradict that or has seen this cartoon, but there you have 10 years of research wrapped up in one cartoon. So I hope that's value for money. And the question is it the same the whole world over? So we've seen very, very important progress in terms of advocacy with the Millennium Development Goals, followed by the Madrid International Plan of Action on Ageing. We've had these issues about, are the generations actually driving apart, and are they at odds with one another, or in fact is there an interdependency? And perhaps nowhere have we seen that more in HIV/AIDS and the role of grandparents. I've mentioned age-friendly cities. The Institute has done a huge amount of work in this project, the future of retirement, very much a shared issue. And I was very excited to hear from Jaco earlier on about the progress of the African Research into Ageing Network. So I'm convinced that actually these issues are global issues, and they manifest themselves, of course, locally, but they are global issues. One, I thought, fascinating and dramatic and worrying photograph I found in The Guardian with its amazing double-page spread photographs was of an emergency drop of aid. And I wondered what you thought that story was telling. It's a little bit mangled, but that doesn't matter, because this is showing a drop of supplies and the clamouring following an emergency, following an earthquake, And the drop of supplies that took place after that seems to me to be telling a story which is not very age-friendly. The Institute has been at the centre, and I think will be the centre, and just looking at the work programme, the posters, the website today, these issues you are right into. The issue of intergenerational fairness. Was David Willits, the politician, the British politician, right when he published the book which is called The Pinch, and said how the baby boomers have stolen their children's future and why they should give it back? Very challenging argument, particularly if you happen to be a baby boomer. But those issues of what is the division and how are we going to reach that contract? The issue of risk and longevity, a big theme in the Institute's work. I personally think that needs to be taken forward with more and more attention about these transition points, these stepping stones in later life, because it seems to me that those stepping stones of retirement, decision about where to live, onset of care needs, bereavement, those are major, major transition points which are so often much, much worse than they even need to be. Who will care and who cares now? The issue of productivity and working longer, is retirement in the process of being abolished? And what we hear so often is people saying, please don't cast me aside. And the role and the empowering role for older people as consumers, and a very important piece of work recently by the International Longevity Centre called The Golden Economy, and capturing quotes like the individual older man who said, there are companies out there who just willfully refuse to take my money. There is an inbuilt ageism into the selling of goods and services. So I want to leave you with two questions. Does the future belong to technology? Here is a photograph of a man in Japan who, again, I am reliably informed is happy because he is standing beside his noodle pot, and his noodle pot has just boiled, but that's not quite so significant as the fact that I'm told his noodle pot has just sent his son, who lives 60 miles away, an email saying your father's noodle pot has boiled. And this is where, so you think your pet seal is quite nifty. This is something else, I think. Or does it obviously, I think, belong to what people themselves decide to do? This is a campaign group lobbying for age equality law a couple of years back. I'm very interested in the relative international experience, AARP, day and age. What are we doing in this country? Is Julia Neuberger right when she says older people should punch harder and the age movement is too polite? So you've got a pretty militant bunch of people, but they are looking a little bit organised and polite, and I often speculate on what would have happened if one of the letters hadn't turned up. What would then have been the case? Would we have had ban G-ism, for example, if the second A? So I aim to conclude. What I would say is the Oxford Institute of Population Ageing is a fantastic success story, and it reflects a fantastic success story, which is the progress that, in fact, older people have made, and the progress that has been made in getting their needs at least on the agenda. So that's a pretty good cause for celebration, I would say, tonight. And so I was trying to find out what way to end, how to celebrate, how to have a note of celebration, yet responsibly refer to public health messages. So this is what I came up with. Thank you very much.